We now welcome in on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline, longtime friend of the program, play-by-play man for ESPN and the Pac12 Networks, Roxy Bernstein. Roxy, it's been too long. How are you?
Good morning, boys. It has been too long.
May 29th, and we're excited about that because we get to cover a myriad of subjects with you, ranging from BYU baseball, of all things, to BYU football against Pac-12 opponents in the fall, and we'll hit a little Cougar basketball as well. But let's start with BYU baseball and the fact that they didn't get into the NCAA tournament. In your opinion, did they deserve a spot in the field of 64, or did they not do enough late in the season?
The Batcats got hosed, boys.
Ugh.
They deserve to be in. Okay, yes. Look, they didn't take care of business in Stockton last week and went 2-0 at the WCC tournament. But they won the league. They had an RPI in the top 50. And that's difficult considering the landscape and how challenging it is for Mike Littlewood to get some of those midweek games, right, to help that RPI and boost it.
Yeah.
But their RPI was strong. They deserved, to me, they deserved to be in the field. There's some teams I have issue with being in. For example, a team like TCU, right? They had an RPI 59, so it was lower than BYU's RPI. They finished with a losing record in their conference. Why did they get in? And Florida finished 13-18 in the SEC. Why are they in the field? And to me, that should be a non-starter when you have a below 500 record in your conference and you have a conference champion in BYU that didn't get in. It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's tough, and I wish that men's basketball and the way that that is handled in terms of here's the information we use as a strong reference for organizing the criteria in which we use. Baseball, it's like, okay, RPI, top 50, and what else? So it's hard to know what was used and what wasn't, and BYU wasn't close. They weren't one of the first four out, which I thought they'd at least be there.
I thought so, too, and that was even just as shocking to me, that they weren't among those first few teams out. And look, there's no secret that the NCAA tournament is weighed heavily on the RPI, and the SEC certainly it finds ways to manipulate that system and just seems the committee is married to it. And there's a strong influence of people from the Southeast, and that's why I think you see 10 SEC teams in the field.
Goodness.
And it's unfortunate. We know how good the baseball is in the WCC, right? And LMU won it, and I'll get to see them this weekend. I've got the UCLA regional. But there's a lot of good baseball out west. And I felt now for a couple of times we've seen it, and not just this year with BYU being left out, but we've seen the WCC slided, whether it was Gonzaga deserving to be in it as an at-large a couple of years ago. It really is unfortunate. And when you have only 9 teams from the West Coast in the NCAA tournament, there's something wrong.
Yeah, 9 out of 64. Yeah, again, I've seen those numbers before, but hearing you say that again, just it kind of baffles me. So what can change? Will anything change? How does this all get resolved?
That's a very good question, and I'm not. I don't know the answer. I really don't. I mean, but the one thing is, I think they're too dependent on the RPI, and it is weighted. I really feel they should value conference championships. And I get why there's conference tournaments, and we see them in basketball, and they're so successful. And we see them in baseball, though the Pac-12 and the Big West, for example, do not have postseason tournaments. They reward the regular season champion with the automatic bid, which I'm more of a fan of because I really do believe we need to value the regular season championship. But this is the landscape we are in. And I do think there somehow has to be a stronger voice for the West Coast because at the end of the day, you check, and there are more national championships from the teams out west than there are when you look at – here's my favorite stat, my go-to, and here's me being that Pac-12 apologist that I am. If you add up the number of national championships that the SEC, ACC, and Big 12 have, it's still not as many as the Pac-12 has.
Wow.
There you go. Plus, you had Fullerton and kind of their place in this, and the West Coast is represented well, right?
Yeah, and Pepperdine's got one also.
Yeah, how about that? Let's talk a little men's hoops. Jake Tolson, transferred from Utah Valley, former Cougar. He's here, WAC Player of the Year. We gave our projected starting lineups in the opening segment there, but what do you think of BYU basketball with Tolson and now obviously Mark Pope and his new staff and this new-look BYU team?
Well, I'm a big Mark fan. I got to know him when he was an assistant there at BYU, and I thought he did a really good job. I only had one of his games over the last few years when he was at Utah Valley, but so impressed in the way he ran his program and the detail that he paid attention to in terms of scouting reports, in terms of putting his players in positions to succeed. And look, Dave had an unbelievable run, so successful at BYU, and it was a great run. And unfortunately, he decided that that's it, and I'm going to move on and enjoy life. But I think BYU found the right fit with Mark Pope. He understands it. He gets it. He knows what it takes to win, and it doesn't help or it certainly helps when he brings in a high-powered scorer to help that offense. So I think that it's going to be a nice turn the page. I think it'll be as seamless as a transition can go, considering the connection that Mark Pope had to BYU. And I expect this team to be right there at the top of the West Coast Conference again next year.
All right, I want to ask you one more basketball question, then we'll finish with football. Roxy, is it too much to expect BYU to finish second in the West Coast Conference next year in year one with Mark Pope because they've added a guy like Jake Tolson?
I don't think it's too much to expect it. And look, we all know that Gonzaga is the team to beat. And, some of the news yesterday, some of those guys who declared for the draft, like Killian Tilly and Philip Petrusev, are coming back, and they have a great recruiting class. So even though they lost a lot, they're still the team to beat in the league. St. Mary's clearly made strides, and Jordan Ford is a tremendous player. And we know how good of a coach Randy Bennett is. But I could see BYU battling with St. Mary's for the second spot, even though the Gales won the WCC tournament championship. But look, I like the program. I like Mark. Okay, it's a transition in year one, but if he can get things in order come January, I think they can make a push. And we know how much better the league was last year from top to bottom. I really saw the league grow last year and trending upward. And the bottom of the league was a lot better to me last year than we've seen in recent years.
Let's finish with a football question. BYU plays 3 teams from the Pac-12 this year: Utah, USC, Washington, all in Provo, all in the first 4 games. How do you see BYU faring in those 3 games?
It's going to be tough because, unfortunately, for the Cougars, to me, they have 3 of the best 4 teams in the Pac-12 on the docket.
It's great news.
Right? Well, I guess it's good and bad, right? It'll certainly help the RPI.
Don't bring RPI into football. Get out of here.
Of the 3 games, I'll put it this way. I think the best chance for a BYU win is the USC game.
Agreed.
I think there's still a lot of unknowns about the Trojans because they're changing the entire complexion of the offense, and they're going to the air raid with Graham Harrell taking over as the offensive coordinator. So I think that is an opportunity, and they're coming off a tough season where they went 5-7, but they still got a lot of talent. I honestly believe the team up the road might be the best team in the Pac-12 with the balance and depth that Utah has.
All right, that's enough. Roxy, we're done here.
Did I just anger your entire audience and everybody in the control room as well, including the 2 of you?
They're like, Utah, come on. No, you're right. Utah is going to be a good team.
They look loaded. They look loaded, for sure.
They return a lot of talent, yeah.
Yeah, I did their spring game on TV, and I was very impressed with the way they ran things. And I did the game with Yogi Roth, and Yogi said it may have been the best spring practice a couple days before the spring game that he's ever seen.
Get out of here. We can't gauge practices. Come on.
I'm just telling you what he said. That's not for me. But Andy Ludwig comes back as the offensive coordinator for Coach Witt, so I like them. But Washington's interesting also because I'd rather play them early than late, and you guys are getting them somewhat early, where they're going through a number of changes, right? They lose Jake Browning, who was the all-time leading passer and the all-time wins leader at quarterback in Huskies history. Miles Gaskin, the all-time leading rusher in Washington history, is gone. They had some first-round talent on the defensive side. That's all gone. There's a lot of talent, but it's unproven, and if you can get them early, which BYU is, I think that gives you a decent chance to win the football game.
Roxy, great stuff. BYU baseball, basketball, and football, all neatly packaged into one fantastic interview. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Roxy.
Anytime, boys. Have a good one.
You got it. Roxy Bernstein of ESPN on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.